Let me start with a question that might make you uncomfortable. Are you living your life, or are you copying someone else's? Because weak minds follow trends, but strong minds build paths. Trends are popular, but paths are powerful. Trends change every season, but paths create legacies. And if you don't decide to think for yourself, the world will gladly decide for you. Most people wake up every day scrolling, copying, chasing what's popular, wearing what's trending, talking like everyone else, dreaming small dreams designed by someone they've never met. Weak minds move with the crowd because it feels safe. Strong minds move with purpose, even when it feels lonely. Let me tell you something most people don't want to hear. If you always fit in, you'll never stand out. Success has never lived in the comfort zone of the crowd. Here's the truth. Trends don't require thinking, they require following. And following is easy. Building a path requires vision. It requires discipline. It requires the courage to be misunderstood. Strong minds don't ask, what's everyone doing? Strong minds ask, what am I called to build? And the moment you stop copying and start creating, your life begins to change. Weak minds borrow opinions. Strong minds develop principles. Weak minds chase attention. Strong minds chase mastery. Weak minds want quick results. Strong minds are willing to play the long game. You see, trends give you likes, but paths give you leverage. Trends make you visible for a moment, but paths make you valuable for a lifetime. Let me break it down for you. If you follow a trend, you're always late. If you build a path, you become the reference point. People don't remember the crowd, they remember the pioneer. And pioneers are rarely applauded in the beginning. They're questioned, they're doubted, they're criticized. But history never celebrates followers. History rewards builders. Strong minds understand something weak minds never will. Discomfort is the price of destiny. When you build your own path, you won't have a map. You'll have faith. You won't have validation. You'll have vision. And you won't have company. You'll have conviction. But that's the cost of greatness, and it's worth paying. Stop outsourcing your thinking. Stop renting your identity from social media. Stop waiting for permission to be great. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs a creator. It needs someone bold enough to say, I will not follow the noise. I will build the road. Most people are not driven by purpose. They are driven by comfort. Comfort feels safe, familiar, and socially approved. So the average person structures their entire life around avoiding discomfort. They choose careers that don't challenge them, relationships that don't stretch them, and routines that don't demand growth. Comfort doesn't require courage, it only requires compliance. That is why the crowd always feels full. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Comfort is a silent thief. It steals ambition, urgency, and eventually destiny. Purpose, on the other hand, does not negotiate with comfort. Purpose demands movement when staying still feels easier. It calls you forward when quitting would be logical. People who live for comfort ask, will this be hard? People who live with purpose ask, will this matter? That single shift in thinking separates followers from leaders. One mindset looks for relief, the other looks for responsibility. And responsibility is heavy, which is exactly why most people avoid it. Comfort wants guarantees. Purpose requires faith. Comfort says, show me the results first. Purpose says, move first, and the results will follow. That's why so many people wait their entire lives for the perfect moment that never arrives. They want certainty before commitment, but purpose never offers certainty, only direction. Strong minds understand that clarity is not a prerequisite for action. Action is the path to clarity. Here's a reality most people don't want. To admit, comfort produces average results. You cannot live a safe life and expect an extraordinary outcome. The greatest opportunities usually arrive disguised as inconvenience, pressure, and risk. Leaders recognize opportunity where others see disruption. While followers are asking how to stay comfortable, leaders are asking how to grow stronger. And growth, by definition, requires resistance. Comfort-focused people make decisions based on how something makes them feel right now. Purpose-driven people make decisions based on where they want to be later. One trades long-term fulfillment for short-term relief. The other sacrifices short-term ease for long-term impact. That's why leaders are willing to do today what others refuse to do, because they see tomorrow differently. Comfort keeps you dependent on approval. Purpose frees you from it. When comfort is your goal, rejection feels personal, criticism feels fatal, and failure feels final. But when purpose is your driver, rejection becomes redirection, criticism becomes instruction, and failure becomes feedback. Strong minds don't need applause to proceed. They move because they are convinced, not because they are celebrated. Look closely and you'll notice this pattern everywhere. The crowd waits to be told what to do. Leaders decide, the crowd waits for permission. Leaders take responsibility, the crowd avoids risk, leaders manage it. Comfort keeps you reactive. Purpose makes you intentional. And intentional people don't drift into greatness, they design it. Here's the hook most people miss. Comfort asks for less effort now, but demands more regret later. Purpose asks for more effort now, but delivers peace later. Every meaningful life is built on that exchange. Strong minds understand that comfort is a reward, not a lifestyle. It is something you earn after commitment, not something you chase before it. When purpose becomes your filter, excuses lose their power. You stop asking whether you feel like showing up and start asking whether showing up aligns with who you are becoming. That is the moment leadership begins. Not when people follow you, but when comfort stops controlling you. Trends are attractive because they promise relevance without responsibility. They give people the feeling of progress without requiring personal conviction. When something is trending, you don't have to think deeply, commit fully, or stand firmly. You simply participate. That's why trends spread so quickly and disappear just as fast. They are built on attention, not intention. Principles, however, demand something far more valuable: discipline. And discipline is never popular in the beginning. A trend asks only one question: is everyone else doing this? A principle asks a much harder one: is this aligned with truth, values, and long-term vision? Most people choose trends because trends remove the burden of thinking. They outsource their decision-making to the crowd. But when you live by trends, your direction is always controlled by what's loudest, newest, or most visible, not by what's right or lasting. Here's the hook most people overlook. Trends make you visible for a moment, but principles make you valuable forever. Visibility can be rented, value must be built. Principles operate quietly, often unnoticed, but they compound over time. They shape character, sharpen judgment, and create consistency. And consistency is the foundation of trust. No legacy has ever been built on inconsistency. Trends reward speed, principles reward endurance. Trends celebrate quick wins, instant recognition, and fast growth, but they rarely survive pressure. The moment conditions change, the trend collapses. Principles don't collapse under pressure, they are revealed by it. When life becomes difficult, trends give you no guidance, but principles tell you exactly how to respond. That is why strong minds don't panic when circumstances shift. They are anchored, not drifting. Living by principles means you be willing to be out of sync with the moment to stay in alignment with the mission. It means you will sometimes look outdated, misunderstood, or even foolish to those who live for what's popular. But principles don't compete for attention. They wait for results to speak. And results speak louder than trends ever could. Trends are reactive. Principles are proactive. Trends change based on external noise. Principles are internal standards that don't bend every time the environment shifts. When you live by trends, your emotions rise and fall with public opinion. When you live by principles, your decisions remain steady regardless of applause or criticism. That emotional stability is not accidental. It is trained through commitment to values that don't change. Here's another truth that separates strong minds from weak ones. Trends seek approval. Principles command respect. Approval is cheap and temporary. Respect is earned and enduring. People may not always agree with principled individuals, but they trust them. And trust is the currency of leadership. Without trust, influence is shallow. With trust, influence multiplies. Principles also create identity. Trends create confusion. When you chase trends, you are constantly reinventing yourself to stay relevant. When you live by principles, your identity becomes clear and consistent. People know what you stand for, what you will tolerate, and what you will never compromise. That clarity attracts opportunity, partnerships, and loyalty. The most dangerous thing about trends is not that they change, but that they convince people to change with them. Over time, constant adaptation without values erodes integrity. Principles protect you from becoming a stranger to yourself. They draw boundaries that keep success from costing you your soul. Strong minds understand that legacy is not built in moments of popularity, but in seasons of discipline. Long after the trend fades, the principle remains. And what remains is what people remember, follow, and build upon. Borrowed thinking feels intelligent, but it is one of the most expensive habits a person can develop. It gives the illusion of wisdom without the work of understanding. When people repeat opinions they never examined, they sound informed, but they are not empowered. Power comes from comprehension, not repetition. The mind that only echoes what it hears can never lead, because leadership requires original thought. Most people don't realize how often their decisions are influenced by voices they didn't choose. Social media, family expectations, cultural norms, and popular narratives quietly shape beliefs before anyone stops to question them. Borrowed thinking thrives in environments where speed matters more than depth. It's easier to agree than to analyze, easier to repeat than to reflect. But ease has a cost, and that cost is growth. Here's the hook most people miss. When you borrow someone else's thinking, you also inherit their limitations. Every opinion carries the boundaries of the person who formed it. If their vision is small, your results will be small. If their fears are strong, your actions will be cautious. Borrowed beliefs quietly place a ceiling on potential, and most people never realize who installed it. Independent thinking requires courage because it invites friction. The moment you question a popular opinion, you risk standing alone. And standing alone feels dangerous to a mind conditioned to seek approval. That's why borrowed thinking spreads so easily. It keeps people socially safe. But safety and significance rarely occupy the same space. Strong minds are willing to endure discomfort in exchange for clarity. Growth begins the moment you ask, why do I believe this? That question is threatening to borrowed thinking because it exposes weak foundations. Opinions that cannot survive examination were never yours to begin with. Strong minds don't reject ideas automatically. They interrogate them. They test a sum. Ions against evidence, experience, and principle. That process is slower, but it produces wisdom instead of noise. Borrowed thinking also creates emotional dependency. When your beliefs come from others, your confidence depends on their approval. Disagreement feels like a personal attack because your identity is tied to borrowed ideas. Strong minds don't collapse under opposition because their beliefs are rooted in understanding. They can explain what they think, why they think it, and where they are willing to change. Here's another truth that separates strong minds from weak ones. Borrowed thinking reacts, developed thinking responds. Reaction is emotional and immediate. Response is intentional and measured. People who borrow thoughts are constantly outraged, constantly confused, constantly shifting positions. People who develop their thinking remain steady, even in chaos. That steadiness attracts trust, and trust amplifies influence. Original thinking doesn't mean rejecting all outside ideas. It means processing them instead of parroting them. Strong minds listen widely but decide narrowly. They consume information, but they don't surrender judgment. They understand that knowledge is not the same as wisdom, and information without interpretation is just noise. Borrowed thinking also limits creativity. If all your inputs sound the same, your outputs will be predictable. Innovation is born when ideas are filtered through personal insight and lived experience. Strong minds don't ask, what should I think? They ask, what do I see that others are missing? That question shifts a person from consumer to creator. The moment you stop borrowing opinions and start forming convictions, your life changes. Decisions become clearer, confidence becomes quieter but stronger, and progress accelerates, not because you know more, but because you finally own what you know. Discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It is often the clearest signal that something is changing. Most people misinterpret discomfort as danger, so they retreat the moment life applies pressure. But pressure is not punishment, it is preparation. Every meaningful level of growth demands a stretch, and stretching never feels comfortable. The mistake weak minds make is assuming that ease equals alignment, when in reality, ease often means stagnation. Here's the hook most people avoid. If your life feels comfortable, you may not be growing, you may be settling. Comfort is not neutral. It quietly trains the mind to avoid challenge. Over time, that avoidance becomes a habit, and habits become identity. Strong minds recognize discomfort as a doorway, not a dead end. They understand that resistance is the evidence of expansion. Discomfort forces honesty. When things are easy, weaknesses remain hidden. When pressure arrives, character is exposed. Discomfort reveals how disciplined you really are, how committed you actually feel, and how much you believe in what you say you want. That revelation is uncomfortable, but it is also invaluable. You cannot improve what pressure has not revealed. Growth requires you to operate without guarantees. Discomfort appears when outcomes are uncertain, when results are delayed, and when effort feels unrewarded. Most people quit in this phase because their expectations are tied to immediate validation. Strong minds are different. They understand that progress often happens quietly before it becomes visible. They stay committed even when motivation fades, because commitment is stronger than emotion. Discomfort also reshapes perspective. What once felt impossible slowly becomes normal when faced repeatedly. The weight that felt unbearable eventually becomes manageable, then light. This is how strength is built, not by avoiding resistance, but by engaging it consistently. Strong minds don't ask how to eliminate discomfort, they ask how to increase capacity. Here's another reality most people ignore: every level of success introduces a new level of discomfort. The discomfort of discipline replaces the discomfort of regret. The discomfort of responsibility replaces the discomfort of limitation. You don't escape discomfort by avoiding growth. You only choose which version you are willing to live with. Strong minds choose the discomfort that leads somewhere. Discomfort also separates intention from commitment. Many people want improvement, but few are willing to endure the process it requires. Discomfort is the filter. It removes the casual, the curious, and the half-committed. What remains are those serious enough to persist. That persistence is what transforms potential into performance. Social discomfort is often the hardest. Outgrowing environments, being misunderstood, or disappointing expectations can feel isolating, but growth rarely receives applause in the beginning. Strong minds accept temporary loneliness in exchange for long-term alignment. They understand that belonging to the future sometimes requires leaving the past. Discomfort trains focus. When everything is pleasant, distraction thrives. When pressure is present, clarity increases. You become selective with time, energy, and relationships. You stop wasting resources on things that don't move you forward. Strong minds don't resent discomfort, they leverage it. The willingness to sit with discomfort without escaping it builds emotional resilience. Instead of reacting, strong minds observe. Instead of quitting, they adjust. This ability to remain steady under strain becomes a competitive advantage in a world addicted to ease. Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes the environment where strength feels natural. Creators think differently because they see the future as something to be shaped, not something to be waited on. While most people react to circumstances, creators design responses in advance. Reaction is emotional and temporary. Creation is intentional and lasting. That distinction alone separates those who remain stuck from those who move ahead. The future does not belong to those who predict it best, but to those who prepare for it and then build it. Here's the hook most people miss. Reacting keeps you busy. Creating makes you powerful. Reaction consumes energy without producing leverage. Creation requires effort up front, but multiplies impact over time. Creators understand that what you build today determines what you control tomorrow. That is why they focus less on noise and more on systems, skills, and structure. Creators are not defined by inspiration, they are defined by responsibility. Inspiration fades, but responsibility forces consistency. While followers wait for motivation, creators commit to process. They don't ask how to feel better, they ask how to build better. That mindset shift turns obstacles into raw material. Problems stop being interruptions and start becoming opportunities for innovation. Creation also requires ownership. Reactors blame circumstances, systems, or people. Creators ask what can be improved, adjusted, or redesigned. Ownership is uncomfortable because it removes excuses, but it is also empowering because it restores control. The moment you accept ownership, you stop negotiating with limitations and start engineering solutions. Creators think in terms of inputs and outputs. They understand that outcomes are the result of patterns repeated over time. Instead of hoping for change, they change what they do daily. Small, consistent actions compound into influence, authority, and impact. While others chase shortcuts, creators build foundations. Shortcuts collapse, foundations endure. Here's another reality. Strong minds understand. Creation requires patience before it produces recognition. Most valuable things take time to mature. Reactors want instant feedback. Creators are willing to work unseen. They measure progress by improvement, not applause. That internal scoreboard keeps them moving when external validation is absent. Creators develop uncommon skills. They don't rely solely on talent or luck. They invest in competence. Skills give creators options, and options create freedom. The more value you can produce, the less replaceable you become. Creators are not easily ignored because they solve problems others can't. Creation shifts identity. Instead of asking what's trending, creators ask what's missing. That question changes how you observe the world. Gaps become invitations. Needs become opportunities. Strong minds don't wait to be chosen. They build something so useful they cannot be overlooked. Creators are proactive under pressure. When conditions change, they adapt quickly because they already think in terms of design. They don't panic, they prototype. They don't complain, they construct. This calm under uncertainty is not accidental. It is the result of training the mind to build instead of react. Over time, creators influence environments instead of being shaped by them. Their work sets standards, their ideas set direction, and their systems create momentum. Control doesn't come from force, it comes from value creation. And those who create the most value quietly shape what comes next. Every path that exists today was once invisible. Before it was followed, it had to be built. Strong minds understand that leadership does not begin with recognition, it begins with responsibility. You don't wake up one day with people behind you. You wake up one day willing to move forward without them. That willingness is what eventually turns direction into influence. Here's the hook. Most people don't realize people don't follow confidence, they follow clarity. Clarity comes from action, not intention. When someone consistently moves with purpose, even without applause, their path becomes visible. Visibility attracts attention, attention creates curiosity, and curiosity eventually turns into alignment. That's how leadership forms, naturally, without announcement. Strong minds don't build paths to be followed, they build paths because they must. The need to act outweighs the need to be seen. That authenticity is what gives their movement credibility. People can sense when something is constructed for approval versus built from conviction. Conviction creates gravity. It pulls people in without force. At first, building a path feels inefficient. You are learning through trial, correcting mistakes, and moving slower than those who follow existing roads. But while others are moving fast in crowded directions, strong minds are building infrastructure, and infrastructure always outlasts shortcuts. What feels slow in the beginning becomes unstoppable later. Here's another truth. Your path doesn't need to be perfect to be powerful. It only needs to be real. People don't look for flawless leaders, they look for honest ones. When they see someone navigating uncertainty, adapting, and still progressing, they see permission to try. Your willingness to move imperfectly gives others the courage to begin. Paths become direction when they are repeatable. Strong minds pay attention to what works, refine it, and stay consistent. Consistency turns experience into process, and process into guidance. That is when your personal journey starts becoming a reference point for others. Without teaching a word, you begin leading. Strong minds also understand that influence is a byproduct, not a goal. When influence is chased, integrity is compromised. When purpose is pursued, influence follows naturally. People don't trust those who want to lead, they trust those who know where they're going. Direction creates trust, and trust creates followership. Here's the part most people avoid. The path builder absorbs criticism before receiving credit. Those watching from the sidelines are quick to question, slow to contribute, and hesitant to commit. Strong minds don't argue with spectators, they keep moving. Momentum answers questions better than explanations ever could. As your path becomes clearer, resistance often increases. Not everyone benefits from your progress. Some feel threatened, others feel exposed. Strong minds don't adjust their direction to satisfy discomfort around them. They stay anchored to purpose while remaining respectful. That balance strengthens credibility. Eventually, people begin to follow not because you invited them, but because your results reduced uncertainty. Your path offers proof. It shortens learning curves and removes fear. At that moment, leadership is no longer a title, it's a function. You are no longer walking alone, but you never stopped building as if you were. So remember this, weak minds follow trends because they're afraid to stand alone. Strong minds build paths because they know where they're going. Decide today who you're going to be. The follower who disappears with the trend, or the builder whose path others will one day follow. The choice is yours. Build the path. Your future is waiting.